You wake up, you walk to the bathroom, you look in the mirror without thinking twice. Your brain instantly knows the face looking back is yours. No hesitation, no confusion, but that instant recognition is not something you were born with. It is something you built. And for most of human history, it did not exist at all. Somewhere, right now, a baby is sitting in front of a mirror, reaching toward the glass like it's another child. Your ancestors did the same thing. Except for them, there was no glass. There was only water, a still pond, a puddle after rain, the surface of a lake at dawn. That was the only mirror your ancestors ever had, and even that was rare, fragile, and easy to misread. So what did they see? For a long time, they may not have seen themselves at all. They may have seen a stranger. Psychologist Gallup Jr. spent years testing this exact question, but not on humans, on chimpanzees. In 1970, he placed a red dot on the brow of an anesthetized chimp, then let it wake up in front of a mirror. The chimp touched the dot on its own forehead, not on the mirror, on its own skin. That single motion changed how scientists understood the mind. It meant the chimp knew the reflection was not another animal. It knew the reflection was itself. Most animals fail this test. Dogs bark at mirrors. Cats swat at them. Even some primates never pass. But a small number of species do, and humans are one of them, though not from birth. Here is the strange part. You were not born knowing your own reflection. You had to learn it. Developmental psychologist Philippe Rochat mapped out exactly how this happens in human infants, stage by stage. At first, a baby sees a mirror and reacts to it like a playmate. It smiles at the image. It tries to touch it. It has no idea the reflection is connected to its own body. Slowly, that changes. The baby starts noticing that when it moves its arm, the arm in the mirror moves too. It starts testing this again and again, almost like a private experiment. Move the hand. Watch the mirror. Move it again. Then, somewhere around 18 months, something clicks. In 1972, researcher Beulah Amsterdam ran what became known as the rouge test. She placed a small red mark on toddlers' faces without them noticing, then sat them in front of a mirror. Younger toddlers ignored the mark entirely or reached for the mirror instead of their own face. But older toddlers, right around that 18-month mark, did something different. They touched their own face, not the glass, their skin, their nose, the exact spot where the mark had been placed. That moment is the moment a human brain crosses a threshold. It is the moment self-recognition begins. And it happens to every single one of us, quietly, without ceremony, sometime before we can even speak in full sentences. Now push that same threshold back further. Not 18 months into one life, hundreds of thousands of years into an entire species. Before polished bronze, before glass, before anything resembling a true mirror, your ancestors had almost no reliable way to see their own face. Water was unpredictable. Wind rippled it. Light distorted it. A face staring back from a puddle might look wrong, warped, unfamiliar. Imagine catching a glimpse of your own eyes for the first time, not knowing they were yours. Would you flinch? Would you reach out to touch the stranger staring back? Would you assume it was a spirit, a double, a second self hiding beneath the surface of the water? Some anthropologists believe this exact confusion shaped early mythology. Reflections show up again and again in ancient stories, almost always as something dangerous, a double, a trick, a soul stolen by water. The idea that your reflection could be separate from you, watching you, judging you, is ancient enough to appear across cultures that had no contact with each other at all. That is not a coincidence. That is a pattern. And patterns like that usually point to something biological, not cultural. Your brain did not evolve to recognize glass and silver backing. It evolved to recognize faces, motion, and threat. A reflection breaks all three assumptions at once. It moves exactly when you move. It has a face exactly like yours. And yet, it is not a person you can touch, hug, or speak to. No wonder it unsettled people for so long. Even once mirrors existed, actual polished mirrors, made from bronze, then silver, then glass, they were rare, expensive, and often treated with suspicion. In many early societies, mirrors were linked to death, to the soul, to warnings about vanity. Some cultures covered mirrors after a person died, afraid the soul might get trapped inside, or afraid the mirror might steal the soul of someone who looked too long. That fear did not come from nowhere. It came from confusion. A confusion your own brain briefly lived through, back when you were a baby too young to remember it. Here is the part that should stop you for a second. Somewhere inside your own skull, right now, sits the exact same neural machinery your ancestors were slowly discovering, generation after generation, without ever fully understanding what they were building. You did not inherit mirror recognition the way you inherited eye color. You built it quietly in your first year and a half of life, repeating the same private experiment every baby runs. Move the hand, watch the reflection, move it again, until one day the two things merge into one understanding. That is me. That understanding feels so automatic now that you never question it. But it was earned. Every single human on the planet earns it individually, from scratch, before they can walk properly or speak a full sentence. And it is not universal across every human either. Some studies on isolated communities with no prior exposure to mirrors or reflective surfaces have documented adults reacting with the same confusion Gallup saw in chimpanzees, reaching behind the mirror, searching for the person on the other side before eventually working out what was happening. Anthropologist Daniel Fessler documented some of these encounters directly. Working with remote communities that had limited exposure to reflective surfaces, he watched adults respond to mirrors the way toddlers do. Some laughed, some froze, some reached around the back of the mirror, convinced a second person was hiding just out of sight. It took time, sometimes minutes, sometimes longer, before the same click happened. That is me. Think about how strange that is. An adult brain, fully formed, capable of language, tool use, complex social reasoning, still needing time to solve a puzzle that a toddler in a modern nursery solves before it can talk. That tells you something important. Mirror recognition is not really about intelligence. It is about exposure, about repetition, about the brain being handed a strange new kind of evidence it never evolved to expect. For most of human history, that evidence barely existed. Consider how rare true reflection actually was before recent centuries. Still water only worked under specific conditions. No wind, no ripples, correct lighting. Even then, the image was faint, tinted, and easy to lose the moment a fish moved beneath the surface or a breeze crossed the pond. Polished stone came next, and it was better, but still dim and distorted. Early bronze mirrors, treasured in ancient Egypt and later across Greece and Rome, gave a sharper image, but they were expensive, owned mostly by the wealthy, and still nothing like the flawless glass you glance into each morning without a second thought. For the average person across most of history, a genuinely clear reflection of their own face was something they might see rarely or never at all. Entire lives were lived without ever truly knowing what their own expression looked like from the outside. You have that information available to you dozens of times a day. Your ancestors, for the overwhelming majority of human existence, did not. That gap changes how you should think about identity itself. Self-recognition feels like something private, internal, something you simply are. But so much of how you picture yourself depends on that external evidence, that steady stream of visual confirmation, feeding back into your sense of self every single day. Remove the mirror, and something curious happens. Studies on self-perception show that people consistently misjudge their own resting facial expression, their posture, even their size when they cannot check a reflection regularly. The self you carry in your head is not a perfect copy of the self in the mirror. It is a rough sketch, constantly corrected by glass and glances. Your ancestors carried an even rougher sketch, shaped mostly by how others reacted to them. A parent's face lighting up, a rival's face twisting in anger. Faces were the mirror before mirrors existed, and reading them correctly could mean the difference between belonging to the group or being cast out of it. That may be part of why the moment of self-recognition matters so much developmentally. Rochat's research suggests that once a toddler crosses that threshold, once they realize the reflection is them, something else begins to build alongside it. A sense of being watched, a sense of being an object others can judge, not just a subject having experiences. Some researchers call this the birth of self-consciousness in the truest sense of the word. That single moment, touching your own nose instead of the glass, may be one of the quiet hinge points of human psychology. Before it, you exist only from the inside. After it, you begin to exist from the outside too, as an image other people can see, evaluate, remember. Once that awareness exists, it does not stay contained to mirrors. It spreads into everything. How you dress, how you speak, whether you worry about how a laugh sounded, a text message read, a mistake looked in front of a room full of strangers. All of that traces back, in some small way, to the same neural leap a toddler makes staring at a red mark on their own forehead. So the moment you take for granted every morning, catching your own eyes in the bathroom mirror while barely awake, is not a simple biological reflex. It is a small miracle of development, repeated quietly across billions of individual lives, and once, long before that, slowly discovered across an entire species standing at the edge of still water. You wake up, you walk to the bathroom, and this time, when you look in the mirror, you do not just see your face. You see the end of a very long line of ancestors who once stared at the same reflection and were not sure if they were looking at themselves at all.